the hardest thing with all of us being friends with Josh is you just wish he could catch a break. It's like, you know, he wins the fantasy football league. The Rams are in the Super Bowl. He's got the reigning MVP. Oh, how are the Colorado Avalanche doing right now?
We're in first place.
Big deal.
We didn't even have a dang sweater.
All right, welcome into this edition of Road Trippin' with Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye. I'm your host, Allie Clifton. We are back, finally.
Yes.
We are back. We're part of the Blue Wire podcast network, which we're so excited to be a part of. Shout out to our Blue Wire family. But on this edition, we are coming to you from our Spectrum Sportsnet studios, and we have a very big guest.
Oh, he's big time.
A very successful, respected man, a part of the Kroenke Sports and Entertainment empire. A man who wears many hats.
But respected is like, we're going to have to chill.
We're going to get into all of that in a second.
Oh,
but I may be biased with this because your most important hat that you wear is being a friend of the Road Trippin' family. This is not your first rodeo on Road Trippin'. Josh
Cheers.
Kroenke.
Not my first rodeo.
Cheers.
Not my first rodeo.
Cheers. Not your
guys.
first rodeo.
Happy to be back.
Guess what? We all made eye contact this time.
Hey.
Last time on episode 16, go check it out with Josh. We did not, and he called us out.
Yeah, we're supposed to make it. Well,
I didn't make eye
Channing's not
contact
here.
with Channing because he's not here. He's here virtually somewhere, but I guess it is what it is, Channing. I'm sorry I don't get to see you in the flesh. I'm so sad.
Before we dive in and obviously introduce the relationship, the friendship that the two of you have with Josh, I will say I was getting ready for this episode, and I thought to myself, was he at the NHL All-Star Weekend? Was he at the Pro Bowl weekend? No, Josh, you made your PGA Tour debut.
I had a very special moment this past weekend. I was invited to play in the AT&T Pro-AM up at Pebble Beach. As a golfer that doesn't take it too seriously but has a lot of fun with it, it was an experience I'll never forget. You get a chance to play with a pro. He's playing his own ball, but you're able to contribute as well. If you're playing to your handicap, you make a par. If you get one of your handicap strokes on, then you get a net birdie for your team. And so it's really fun to be able to play with a pro like that, especially in a setting as beautiful as Pebble Beach. Just looking around, I had to pinch myself at some of the scenes that you're seeing up there along the bluffs. I mean, it's Northern California at its best.
Who was the pro that you played with?
Played with a young man named Austin Eckroat. Just graduated from Oklahoma State University. It was one of his first events. Great guy. I think he's got a heck of a bright future ahead of him. Hit some great shots, made the cut as an individual, but unfortunately we didn't make it as a team. I guess that means I didn't carry
Yeah, you did not carry your stuff.
But I've been a little busy lately. What can I say? I haven't been on the practice range. I've had a few things that I'm dealing with.
Speaking of the many hats.
But wait a second. What I love about Josh is super professional. He's very humble. But then when you really get him, it's like, Josh, how many guys in the Pro-Am do you think might have fudged their handicap a little bit?
Look, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus.
Larry Fitzgerald.
No.
That was me. I watched. And I'm like, wait, he's a what? I'm like, dude, like
Larry's a really good player.
That's what I'm saying.
I got a chance to meet him up there. What a wonderful guy.
Yeah, great dude.
Still lives down in Phoenix, Scottsdale area and gets a chance to play all the time down there. So Larry's got a great swing.
Yeah.
There are some other cool guys that were up there. It was cool to see like a guy Bill Murray's been up there playing that tournament forever.
Oh, wow.
But musicians like Macklemore was there playing, Schoolboy Q was there playing. And
Richard's favorite.
Huh?
Schoolboy Q?
Richard's favorite.
That's my
He
guy.
has all his CDs.
No, he said Macklemore.
Macklemore? Did you say I have all his CDs, bro? Okay, so
Got
who
him
was...
saved on your hard drive?
For sure.
Hang on, can we first, Channing, when I sent the video of you to Channing was like, wait, he's on the tour? He literally thought you were on the tour.
I mean, it was covered by Golf Channel. I think ESPN Plus had some like bonus coverage of some holes, and so you better believe I went back through like the 5 hours of footage to find like my 10-second swing.
Okay.
Especially because I hit the green. I made par. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's like a destination hole for golf is this short little par 3 on the point out at Pebble Beach, and that's where they had a camera station that day. And as I got over the ball, there was, someone in the crowd wanted to heckle me just a little bit, yelled out Aaron Rodgers. I had to back off. I had to reset for my shot, which is, as a golfer, it's not ideal. But then as I swung the second time and knew where my ball was headed, someone out yelled out, "Let's go Rams!" So I gave him a little shout out. I said I liked that one, and then it was much easier to miss the 15-foot putt for par and then tap it in.
Oh, excuse me. Josh Kroenke. Oh, someone yelling from the crowd, "Let's go Aaron Rodgers," and enough to distract.
Let's go Rams!
I like that one. Great swing there.
So it's been a while since you've been heckled in sports while on the field. So people don't know, like Josh, Division I athlete, played basketball at Missouri, roommates with Kareem Rush, former Laker. So it's like you've been in this game for a long time. How is it now?
A few times.
You've been heckled. That's what I'm saying. Well, I'm saying while on the field of play.
Skin.
On the field of play. This was the first time that you've been heckled in a while. Was it fun to get those juices going, hit a good shot?
It was a lot of fun, honestly, and especially to do so in a place like playing golf where it's not really my comfort area.
Yeah.
So you kind of had to get over some demons pretty quickly to be able to swing a golf club where there's
front of people
out there
and cameras.
Yeah. But I played. I told you about my professional playing partner. You're also paired with another professional and one other amateur. And I was paired with another amateur named Harris Barton. He's a legendary player for the San Francisco 49ers in the Joe Montana years.
Okay.
And what a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
He made me feel so welcome, and he took a lot of the pressure off in kind of fun ways. And so as I would be standing over the ball, on not a marquee tee box like the hole at Pebble Beach, but it was kind of out of the way. There'd be some fans there, and there were a lot of 49er fans. So Harris would take the time to introduce me to the crowd, and I would have a lot of people screaming, yelling, booing in my backswing. And I encouraged it, and that was kind of the fun of the tournament. Yeah. And so each time I got heckled by the fans, I fortunately piped my drive down the fairway, so I felt pretty good about that. But it was a great event, and people were wonderful. The setting was gorgeous, and the pros were incredibly welcoming as well, which just makes it that much more fun.
That's dope. Hey, Channing, how's your pipe game down the fairway?
Tight. I got 4 kids.
Lauren,
A bunch of hole-in-ones.
You guys are wrong for that.
Listen, no bogeys over here. All birdies.
I'll rephrase. I hit mine straight down the fairway.
There we go.
I do that too. I do that too.
Okay, Josh, of all the things that you have your hand in, which can you, because I didn't want to do you a disservice, so can you please let our audience know? We've got the Rams, the Nuggets, Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, Arsenal
Football Club in London, yes.
Who else am I missing?
You're missing Colorado Rapids. That's our Major League Soccer team. Colorado Mammoth, part of Major League Lacrosse in Denver as well. We're also involved in esports. We're involved in the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, LA Guerrillas. And so there's a lot of things that we're involved in. But, for me personally, probably, we're getting ready to talk sports. And sitting here with Richard, it makes me really excited to be here because there was a game that no one knows about that was played this year that was bigger than anything that I've ever participated in.
Oh, this did.
And that was beating Richard in our fantasy football league final this year.
Like that? How do you say?
I'm very pleased to
Can you please say
I'm
it
the
louder?
champion of our fantasy football league after all these years, and I played Richard in the final. And I had a scheduling conflict. I couldn't make the draft. I see him over there, maybe using some sign language to let him know how he feels about me. But my friends were fortunate enough to draft Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp for me this year.
Well, no.
You know what I love, first of all, that he doesn't take credit and you give
If I'm going to play fantasy
credit.
football, I have to have a bunch of Rams on my team. And so I wasn't there. They gave me a lot of Rams guys, and I just said, thank you. I'll go ahead and take the title this year.
We do an
Fantasy
in-person
football.
draft.
It's a very generous friendship group I have.
Shut up. That's rude.
By the way,
That's
I will
rude.
say, after listing off all my topics, Geeter was like, you have to let everyone know that he won fantasy.
So,
Yeah, Geeter's in there too.
Yeah, Geeter. So me, Geeter, there's a bunch of us in there, and Josh, and we've all been in it since the beginning. We've been doing this now 12 or 13 years.
2008 was our
Yeah,
first
so
year,
we've been doing
13.
it. I've been in the finals 3 times. I've lost 3 times. This is Josh's first time in the finals, and he wins. And we were together during the finals. And you're just sitting here like, this is what it is, because Josh couldn't attend. And normally we all attend the draft together, whether it's Vegas, we've gone a bunch of different places, done it in New York, just different places, and we go do something fun. So we're like, okay, well, Josh can't be here, but let's give Josh like his guys. Let's give him, Stafford.
I always draft Rams.
I know you
Come
always.
on.
I know you always draft Rams. That's why we gave you your guys.
Okay.
Like you weren't you were trying to call in. So he gets Stafford. That sucked. It didn't work out well. Cooper Kupp, he wanted to be the greatest wide receiver in the history of the NFL, so that was cool. So it's like I'm literally going against the most stacked team. My team shouldn't even have made it to the finals. And then I feel like, did you have Jamar Chase also?
I believe so.
Yeah. So he had Jamar Chase, who had like 50 points that day. So I was done before it. And you're just like, I just really wish Josh could catch a break. That's really what it is.
You act like you haven't gone against a stacked team before in your actual own life and come out on top.
Yeah,
so,
but I'm just 0 for
really,
3.
can you just give Josh the credit?
No, I don't like him like that. Like, I wanted to beat him. He knows it. That's why the first thing that he brought up was this. Channing doesn't care because Channing tried to do fantasy with us.
What do you mean? I won my league. I won my league too, so I don't know this. Losing. I don't know that word. I don't know that.
Who was on your team, Channing?
Channing doesn't remember.
Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, and Patrick Mahomes, and then I made a crazy GM deal and got Deebo Samuel halfway through the season. And was absolutely smacking the rest of the league. It wasn't even close.
I got to give a big shout out to my co-managers, Jared Followill and Dougie Shabbat, because, I mean, it's
a team effort.
It's a team effort.
It's a team effort.
Yeah. Because if Richard ever tries to tell you that he's managing his fantasy team by himself, he is lying
That
to
is
his
not
teeth.
true. Not
a chance that Richard is on there doing this.
I am, first of all, so, look, the league, we have partners, we have teammates, we have guys that help us out. Me, I am solo. Like, it is just me. Yeah. I have some advisors. I have some people that I ask questions for what we should do. But now they don't want to give me credit. See, I give Josh credit. He doesn't want to give me credit, but that's cool. Whatever.
Richard, I give you credit. I mean, you've been there before. I haven't. He can't even keep a straight face when I'm trying to give him credit. That's how much involvement he has.
So
in this
now
team.
what? You just have bragging rights till next season?
Yeah,
with
I
fantasy?
mean now the big honor and pressure that I have is now I get to plan our draft for next year. That's the honor of the winner. They get to plan the draft for the next year, and I think. If I know anything about our league, they're actually really happy that I won this because they're really looking forward to the draft now.
They're like Luke. So Luke.
One, he has to come. Two, he has to plan it.
Yeah. So Luke Walton's also in the draft, and he was like, Richard, I'm really kind of rooting for you, but I think everybody really wants Josh to win. Well, so, dude, you've been in the league for 12 years now. It's only fitting that you finally get a chance to pick where we go and what we do.
And honestly, for a few years, I half-assed it. Like, I paid attention, but I wasn't monitoring the waiver wire, which is, the key thing to do for
Were you
fantasy.
busy on a Sunday or a Saturday?
I was a little busy on Saturdays and Sundays, and, when you're dealing with, some of the businesses that I deal with, it's not as appealing to play fantasy.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun, a lot of good banter with your buddies, and now I get to get on his podcast and rub a little salt in the wound.
Whatever.
Perfect. That's exactly why you're here. What is this week like, though, by the way? The last 2 weeks, I guess.
Okay, so back to real sports. So we are, it's been a whirlwind. The last month has been a real whirlwind. Thinking back to January 9th, we lost our last home game of the season versus San Francisco 49ers, and it changed the playoff seeding around significantly. And the way the playoffs unfolded, we wound up hosting the NFC Championship, which was kind of on our heels. We were down in Tampa and then coming back to host. And then we were fortunate enough to win that game, and now we're playing in the Super Bowl. And it's kind of a pinch yourself moment to think back of the journey that we've been on for the last, X number of years, to the opening of the stadium through a global pandemic. And to be here, like I said, you're really kind of pinching yourself to have the opportunity to be a part of this weekend. But I think the cool thing, if I'm going to go all, sports on you, is right after we won the NFC Championship, I was down there and I was around Coach McVay and some of the players, and you could see their joy and their elation of the moment, but there was no satisfaction. Those guys were immediately tuned back in. They're like, this is great, we're happy, but we're by no means satisfied. And I think that's the really exciting thing for a group like that of talented individuals, that to have a really collective mindset of stay focused, let's not get out of our way here, and there's a game to be played outside of this amazing event. I say event because I joked with Richard beforehand. It does feel like we're hosting, the world's biggest party.
You are.
And so, SoFi Stadium is now the world's biggest nightclub. And
yes, it will
I feel like I have the entire world reaching out to me for tickets and things of that nature, and you want to try to accommodate everyone because it's such a special event. I mean, LA hasn't been able to host a Super Bowl since 1993, I think, and so this is a big event in a lot of ways, and to have an LA team playing in it and it to be at our stadium is just a complete honor.
The LA team.
Yeah, the LA team.
The LA team. Let's clarify that. So people always question my loyalty. They're like, wait, you're from Arizona. Shouldn't you like the Cardinals? I hate the Cardinals. I moved to shut up, Channing. I moved to Arizona. I was born here in LA.
Yeah,
I moved to Arizona 88, 89. And then the Cardinals had a stretch of 10 years where they were utterly trash. So I don't support them when they're good. I don't support them when they're bad. I'm just not. So my thing was always that, hey, as soon as LA gets a team, I'm going to support that team whenever it may come. Just so happens to be that the Rams come. So I went to the very first game there. It was at the Coliseum.
We took the Fantasy Football League there we had our draft one year. The first year they came back, we had our draft and then went to a game that night.
Yeah.
And it was the preseason.
Yeah, it was preseason, and then we went to the opening night game. It was a good time. So I am all in on Rams. When people were like, "Oh, were you always a Rams fan?" I was like, "No," but they're back in LA, so now they're what was that whole process? I know that LA didn't have football forever, and then the Rams obviously came back. I know that was an emotional thing for, because you're from Missouri, your dad, with his connections to Missouri, moving that team to LA, tell me about that process.
I mean, I wasn't directly part of the process. As I think you know better than most, I mean, my focus for the last decade or so has been on Nuggets and Avs and Rapids in Denver. And over the last few, I've even obviously expanded over to Arsenal in the UK since, the last 3-4 years or so, spending a lot of time over there. But the Rams, I mean, they had a great run in St. Louis, won a Super Bowl there. But the process of the stadium and moving back to Los Angeles, I mean, we'd probably have to designate a whole nother road tripping podcast for you and get a few other people to come in.
Yeah.
It was an emotional roller coaster, I'm sure, on a lot of levels for a lot of people, no one more so than my father. But to see him up on that stage after the NFC Championship, I know was a moment for him in a stadium that he built, financed himself, and really designed from the ground up. And I know it's something that he's proud of. He wanted LA to be proud of it. And I think back to one of the first design meetings. We were sitting there and they were laying out all the certain aspects of the design and everything. And my dad kind of stopped the meeting and he said, "Look, guys, if we're going to do this, then I want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that makes people proud, because I think our biggest risk, if we're going to do this for a place like Los Angeles, or try to do this for a place like Los Angeles, our biggest risk is undershooting this thing." And so when I first walked out on the 50-yard line of the stadium, in August of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, when you couldn't have people in it, that was when they laid the turf, everything had just been done. I called him and I walked out and I said, "Dad," I was like, "you're not gonna believe where I'm standing." And he said, "Where?" I said, "I'm on the 50-yard line." He said, "Oh, how is it? What do you think?" And I said, "The only thing I can tell you is you did not undershoot this thing."
Yes.
And it's an iconic building. I think the NFL is proud of it. Hopefully Southern California is as well in general. There's going to be a lot of great events coming there in the future, starting off with the Super Bowl right now. But like I said, we got a game to play and we got business to take care of. So hopefully come Sunday evening, we're in a pretty good mood.
Have you guys had a chance yet? Obviously, there's still the ultimate goal to accomplish, right? But whether it be opening night or, during this playoff run, obviously last Sunday with the NFC Championship, have you guys had a moment yet this season where you're just like, wow, in terms of SoFi?
Mine would have been after the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
I mean, I was down there on the field and the confetti was kind of falling, and I gave Odell a big hug and Andrew Whitworth a big hug, and some of the guys that I kind of know a little bit, and it was surreal. Because you remember and you think back to all of the times and the process to getting to that point in time. And so to have a moment like that you really couldn't script or control. I mean, the seating was out of our hands. And then all of a sudden the teams that needed to get upset got upset. And then we were able to take care of business in Tampa following an amazing comeback from Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time. And then, most winning quarterback of all time. And then you get into, all these other things. And then all of a sudden you're hosting an NFC Championship game. And you're like, wow. I mean, this is a moment in time. And you walk into that stadium and you see the fans, you see the Niner fans, you hear how loud it is. and then you're able to come out and accomplish your goal and win the game, which is, you know, completely out of your control. You're fighting against another team that wants to be there just as badly as you do. And the 49ers are a great ball club, and so we had to really, you know, put our foot on the gas late and to take care of business in that moment and win the game to be able to go on to the Super Bowl. You had to kind of take a deep breath and be like, wow, I mean, this is really happening. So we're trying to have another one of those on Sunday, and I think that's a common goal, which is really cool to hear and see from all the players and staff.
So me and Geeter, obviously, like some Cali guys, like we're fully supportive. Like me and Geeter were laughing because people sent us pictures of us, like our screenshots of us, because we were like in the stands. So Josh is up in the suite. Me and Geeter are like, we're on like the 20-yard line. Maybe not sober. I don't know. We're not going to get into details, but we're having a great time. And we're just like fist pumping, going crazy. People like start sending us pictures that we made it on TV. And so me and Geeter are immediately posting it on social media. We're just like, yeah, look at this. We made it. And like somebody was like, you two clowns are on TV for 4 hours every single day. Every day. Like all you're on TV every day. I'm doing stuff. And you guys are super excited that you made it in the crowd during the NFC Championship game. But like that's what it means for the people that have wanted football here in LA, that are like so excited. And it does. Like there was a ton of 49ers there. The 49ers have an amazing fan base. The Bay Area is one of the best like fan experience in towns. When you're talking about the Giants and you're talking about the Warriors, and you know, you're looking at
as
all
I know
that.
from the golf tournament, 49ers have a wonderful fan base.
So like, you know, what does that mean to know that? Okay, so Scotty C, another guy in our fantasy football league, from LA. Dad was a big Rams fan. His dad passed away, and it was just super emotional. Like, have you guys had that interaction with people that are like, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for bringing, you know, the Rams back to LA. Thank you for bringing football back to LA. Like, have you had those emotional experiences with different fans?
Absolutely. I've had several, and I know my dad's had some. All of our executives have had theirs, but I mean, mine first started when the Rams first were announced they were going to move back here. I mean, people forget the history of the Los Angeles Rams is the Los Angeles Rams, you know, from a long time ago up until the mid-'90s when they moved to St. Louis. And so when they came back, one of the first things, I mean, I flew into LAX, went out, hopped in a cab, and I was going over to this kind of dinner that we were going to have, or someone was going to host on behalf of the team, and just making small talk with the driver, and he put two and two together pretty quickly, and he was like, "Oh wow," he's like, "That's you and that's your family, that's your father," and I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "I'm very proud to say that is," and he was like, "I just want to say thank you because I was able to purchase." He's like, when I was a kid, my dad took me to my first NFL game, and that was a Rams game versus, you know, whomever he had mentioned at the time. And he's like, I was able to get online and buy the same exact 2 seats that my dad took me to for my first game. And he's like, I have those seats for the first game back when the Rams come to LA. And he was taking his dad. And so I've had a few stories like that, and the history of the Rams around LA is a very proud one. They don't have a championship here, and so that's going to be our main focus heading into this weekend, is to try to take care of business, regardless of how we do it. Win ugly, win pretty. Let's try to come out there with a win.
Sports are so powerful. Thank you for sharing that story, because I think it's important also, especially for those that maybe do not get a chance to go to SoFi ever and get it to experience all that has to offer, especially when you are a part of an ownership group of not just one team, but several like you are. Do you hear from like other players of other teams when things like this happen? Yeah.
And most definitely. I mean, after the NFC Championship, I think, Richard, you were standing there. We were joking. My phone was going off, you know, seemed like forever. And when I glanced down at it, just one of the texts that had come through was from Nikola Jokic. And, you know, to get a text from a guy like that in the middle of a celebration, you know, is pretty cool. I mean, our other players kind of follow the other teams of they're fans of other clubs, just like, you know, they would be from where their hometown might be. But I think they see that we're trying to apply some of the same principles across our organizations. We encourage our coaching staffs, our management to kind of exchange ideas. You know, you're not really comparing apples and apples. You might be comparing apples and oranges, but, you know, the way you address teams, the psychological aspect of managing and controlling a dressing room, a locker room, with a bunch of grown men who all have, you know, amazing talents, and you're trying to manage all those talents to for the best of the group. There's a lot of similarities there. And so we encourage all of that, and I think it brings people together in interesting ways, and it's been a lot of fun to see our coaches exchanging ideas over the last few years as well.
Brings people together, unlike Road Trippin, because Channing says that he has to talk about Nikola Jokic, which means he's not here in studio with us.
Well, that wasn't his exact term.
Are we pro Nikola or are we anti Nikola? Because every now and then I'll turn on something and there's like, Kendrick Perkins saying something about Nikola, and I'm just I stopped paying attention because I'm like, how can you not love this guy? I mean, the numbers don't lie. He's the MVP.
Channing, what is it?
Unstoppable players in the NBA right now. And Nikola Jokic is one of them. Joel Embiid, Giannis, and Kevin Durant. Those are the 4 most unstoppable players. And this year's MVP is basically going to be who's the healthiest, right? Because it's up to Jokic and Embiid. And I don't think it's anyone. Everyone else is not even close. And I don't know if people watch basketball, but my question to you is, what changed, or is that just his evolution? Because he was always he would get like 12 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Now he's getting fucking 50, 14, and 12. Like, how does that
26,
happen?
14, and 8.
I mean, yeah, 46.
That wasn't.
No. That's what he's averaging: 26, 14, and 8.
God.
He's not even like. It doesn't look like it's work, but he's not out there stressing. Like, he's not a guy that's going to play in the fourth quarter trying to pad stats. He'll sit, right? I think you guys were blowing somebody out a week ago, and he sat basically the whole fourth quarter, laughing with teammates.
Yeah, and real quick, and this is why, I think why, me, you, Luke, Channing, all of us became, really, really close friends is because, you played basketball at a high level, right? So you're playing major Division I college basketball, Missouri, you guys had great teams there. His coach was Quinn Snyder, the coach of the Utah Jazz. That was when we were younger. That was our fun stuff. When you first came out of college, talking about basketball in detail.
Yeah, that was how we all bonded initially.
And it was just us talking about basketball and having fun, talking about all the AAU tournaments. So when you watch Nikola Jokic, when you watch him, and it's you're watching from a trained basketball eye, a person that understands the game. How crazy is it, some of the shit he can do? It's mind blowing.
It's it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. But there are times when I'm watching our games, and granted, I mean, I'm assuming I watch more Nuggets games than you guys do. I mean, it's probably part of my job.
If they're on
it's actually part of their job specifically too.
You guys are seeing stat lines. You guys are tuning into the big national ones, but you're not tuning in to on the random game on Tuesday night.
Yes, if they're on the test, then I watch. If they're not going to be on the test the next day, then I don't watch.
All right. Now we know how Richard cheats on all of his exams.
You just got to study what's going to be on the test.
Okay, so Nikola, I mean, he's as unique of a player, I think, as you'll ever come across.
Yeah, agreed.
We were lucky enough to draft him. I think, I remember his whole story very vividly. I mean, we had a gentleman, he now runs the Chicago Bulls, named Arturas Karnisovas on our staff. Tim Connolly is still our president of basketball ops. Arturas was our number 2, our GM at the time. And they kind of pulled me in, and they were just like, this is how we see the draft. We have number 11 and we have 41, and we'd love to take a flyer on a young man in the second round. And we talked about him, and they showed me grainy footage of this kid that was in this pink jersey. And if you've ever seen the jerseys of the team that Nikola played with in Europe, they're unforgettable. But you see this kid throwing these passes, and he probably couldn't jump over a phone book at the time.
Still.
But I mean.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you saw what they saw, which was his feel.
Yeah.
And I've said, I trust you guys. Let's figure this out. And so that draft turned in. We traded down from 11 to 16, and we traded 11 for 16 and 19, and then we drafted Jusuf Nurkic and Gary Harris. And then at 41, we took Nikola. So, I mean, that was a hell of a draft for us. Unfortunately, Jusuf and Gary, they moved on to other teams. Nikola's, now the MVP of the league. But even he stayed over in Europe for another year. And when he came over the following summer and summer league, we were still kind of like, what do we have here? I'll give Mike Miller credit.
Yeah.
Mike Miller was the first one to call the shot. Mike was on our team that year. And Mike, just like Richard and I have a great
Like
relationship.
the Mike Miller?
Yeah, Mike Miller.
Point, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike,
Like, no
as I have a
shoot,
random
shoot,
relationship with Richard and Channing, Mike and I were on the same like traveling AAU team way back.
Oh,
in
no
the
way.
day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Mike was on our team, and it's always fun to have my friends around a little bit because I know they have an interesting perspective and they just shoot me straight. But Mike came walking over from training camp, and he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "Who is this kid?" And he's like, "This Jokic." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "That's our, kid." He goes, "Never trade him." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Don't trade." He goes, "If anything comes up in the next few years, don't trade him." And I was like, "Well, we weren't planning on it. We think he's got a chance to be pretty good. Why?" He goes, "That dude's IQ's through the roof." And so I was like, right away, and when I love when I sit down and talk to my friends, because a lot of times my friends, we don't talk about talent, ability, shooting, this, that, flash. Like most of what we talk about doesn't pass the eye test. And to me, the best players, when you sit down and you talk to Bron, like you're really rolling through. Like LeBron's basketball IQ is insane. He just has these physical gifts that people latch onto first. But LeBron can see and read the game as well or better than anybody. And Nikola, I'm not going to put him remotely close to a LeBron yet in his career, but Nikola has the ability to win his individual matchup, and once he wins his individual matchup, he knows the best play to make every time. Dude, and I think that's basically what LeBron does on a nightly basis and has done his entire career is you win your individual matchup, and if you can go score, you do that. And if not, you're reading the defense because they're constantly rotating to that next spot. And Nikola, there was a game winner he threw to Aaron Gordon a few weeks ago in the corner.
Yeah, I was doing the call.
Were you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Nikola gets double teamed. He's way out on the opposite wing, and it's the end of the game, and he just waits for that defender that he knows has to move, and he doesn't. He hardly looks. He's 7 feet tall. He sees over the two guys coming at him. He waits for the other defender to move, and then he throws the ball where he knows the defense can't get it, and Aaron Gordon hit a game winner. And no one else can see that pass.
No, and
there's only a handful of guys on this planet that can see that pass.
Well, and that's when you're talking about it's different, right? Like you can watch a guy for a few minutes and be like, okay, that's different. Whether it's physical like attributes, whether like you watch him make a play and you watch him make a couple of plays, and that's where it's like he plays a different game. Mm-hmm. There's only 5 or 6 guys in the NBA in any sport that you're like, oh no, he's playing a different game. Mm-hmm. Like we're out here trying to score, trying to win games. We're like, he's just out here playing. Like, and look, Bron is one of those guys. I think Luka Doncic is one of those guys. KD, Joel is one of those guys because they're just physical ability. But like what he does, I think when you get guys like KD, when you get guys like Joel, once their mental IQ catches up to their physical ability, which is like a 10 out of 10, that's when they start to become like MVPs high level. Jokic, his mental ability, his physical ability has to catch up to his mental ability. And that's what he did. Like he lost 30 pounds from when he came into the league. Yeah. And then that's why he's become so like almost an Iron Man for you guys, and just his overall like focus. Like when you play against Bron and you're like, okay, we got to stop him. We also got to stop him from getting everybody else involved. Mm-hmm. And then you got to keep him off the glass. You got to do all these things. Like, what has been the most surprising thing that even after watching Jokic for a little bit, what's been the most surprising thing that you see year on year? Because he keeps getting better.
I couldn't point to a specific thing, but I think that the most impressive thing about Nikola is he's never lost. He's the same person that he was when he came over at 18, 19 years old, even though he's the most valuable player of the league now, the reigning MVP. But he's as he's understood. I think even his gifts. But you go back, he would show it in flashes. And like in his rookie year, I remember we were playing against the Memphis Grizzlies, and you see like this young Nikola out there, and he's being guarded by Marc Gasol, who at the time was probably one of the preeminent centers in the league. And Marc's kind of getting a feel for him, and Nikola, he never moves his head, but there's a play where somebody cut, and Marc Gasol is defending him in the post, and Nikola threw a behind-the-back pass behind Marc's back, and to a cutting Gary Harrison stride for a layup, and you're sitting there watching this, and you're like,
that's not normal. That's a different game.
But he was seeing things one step ahead, and I think to Richard's point, like as he cleaned up his diet, he understood what makes him feel better physically. He works out constantly now. He's never going to look like, Serge Ibaka in his prime. But, or somebody like that that's,
He can look like Channing.
He's never going to look like Channing Frye in his prime.
God.
But he doesn't need to. I mean, you give him the ball, 15 feet from the basket, and maybe outside of one or two guys, he's going to be able to back him right down because he's so strong. He just may not look like he's chiseled out of granite, but he's as strong as anybody that you'll come across.
And his IQ and understanding how to use his body.
Absolutely.
In the way in which he is. Channing, okay, so you said that he is a part of 4 guys that are unstoppable in the NBA. Is he your MVP right now?
This week? No.
Oh, Jesus. Today.
But today, no. But
in the last 12 hours?
In the last 12 hours.
No, but I mean, it's like this month, Joel Embiid has had a crazy month.
Yeah.
Right? And then
what a player. What a player.
Next month, Jokic has an even crazier month. And I also think what's dangerous is, I don't know how much you could talk about this, but like Jamal Murray may be coming back. Guys after the break play a lot different. Like they're starting to get a lot more. To think of all the injuries Denver has had, and then you think of all the time and all the COVID protocols, injuries that they've been dealing with, and then you think like now they get a break and say, hey, this is the home run stretch. You're going to see guys playing a lot better basketball. And that's what's scary about Denver is like if Jokic has been playing that good and now the rest of his teammates continue to get better, his stats are going to get better. He's going to have a 25-point assist night one of these nights. He's going to have a 50 ball. I think for me, he's going to evolve the better his teammates get. So that's what's scary about the Denver Nuggets, where it's like now it's like, I think to me, Philly is who they are. And Embiid needs to continue to dominate scoring where Jokic can dominate the game when it comes to assists and rebounds. And defensively, he's taking leaps and bounds because he's engaged. It's not like he's out there blocking crazy shots, but I don't know how he does it. He had a game-winning block. He's had blocks where he doesn't leave the ground. He's had blocks
Channing, you hit on something there, but I think and I hate to even get into any discussion about MVPs or anything like that because I think we're still, to say we're pinching ourselves about being in the Super Bowl this week, we're pinching ourselves about drafting and developing and having an MVP on our roster in Denver.
First second round pick
ever. So to have him is something that we're ecstatic about. But to see what Nikola and Joel have done in particular this year without key guys on their team and to do it with smiles on their face. I mean, and as big men, I think it's pretty cool to see the league have Joel, a guy like Joel and a guy like Nikola doing their thing. And, then you get into the KDs, Giannis's. I mean, look at what Golden State and Steph have been doing. I mean, dude, it's so cool to see the league
I said that
doing what it's doing right now.
That 2 years ago, like Anthony Davis, and I know this is going to get cut because we're on the Laker Network, but I was like, Anthony Davis is like a top 5 player, right? And then cut to 2 years later, and you're like, holy shit, like he might be the 4th best big man, and I'm including Giannis as a big man. It might be Joel, it might be Jokic, it might be Joel, and then Giannis. And you're like, the fact that we went from like an era. Listen, man, like you got to know your audience, right?
But he also might be giving you something to think about too. Since his return, Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis has been so impressive in his return. And that was the thing. When he was out, it was like, when we were talking about Anthony Davis, it was never like slamming Anthony Davis or saying, it was just like, yo, Anthony, bro, wake up. You're one of the greatest players we've ever seen in our lives. Like, we've been watching this game for 30 years. Like, dude, do you know what you can do? And you wanted him to get back to that level. And I think that having other big men that he's like, oh shit, these guys are playing their A game. Like that's it. Look, man, iron sharpens iron. And so and I think Anthony Davis, when you look at his performance, I think it only makes him better that he's got these other big men. And that's when there was no big men for 15 years that were super dominant since Shaq. And I know there were Tim Duncan and all these guys. And there was a little bit of the small ball era that was dominant. But now all of a sudden these bigs have come out of nowhere in the last 5 years. And now it's like Anthony Davis, Jokic, Giannis, and Joel. These guys are just, running the league, man.
Well, you're setting. It's cool to see guys like Joel and Nikola kind of leading the charge because, the game kind of got away from big guys for a second there. And, when you're playing, the spacing game that has become very popular and very efficient in today's modern NBA, the big guy kind of got forgot about there for a second. But then you have the emergence of Joel and Nikola, and they're, I guess, molded like a more traditional back-to-the-basket center. But then you realize that the skill sets that they have, and they're stretching out to the three-point line. It's not where they want to go first. They don't run to the line and stop. They run to the block, and they're doing things, but they're shooting threes. They're helping facilitate. They're doing dribble handoffs, and there's just so much more things that these bigs are doing to get their teammates involved and to make their presence felt even more. And you see guys like Joel and Nikola doing it just as well, if not better than anybody right now. It's great to see.
It's like they haven't forgot about their bread and butter, yet they've evolved.
But they've evolved. They're evolving the game on the fly.
Before we move on, because you also have another team that you can be very proud of right now, I do want to get your thoughts, and I don't want to misquote Coach Malone at all, because I love him. I think he's an awesome coach, respect him. But the quote has happened a couple weeks ago. But just along the lines of Nikola and the MVP chatter, do you feel like he doesn't get talked about enough? Or maybe get the respect that he deserves?
Just say yes. Just say yes.
And we all understand your position. So
Absolutely.
Taking that into account as well.
I think if you look at the, look at the advanced stats right now.
Yeah.
It's incredible what Nikola's doing. It's absolutely incredible. The impact he has on a game, both offensively and I think the underrated aspect of his game right now, when he's throwing up triple doubles on a nightly basis, what he's doing anchoring our defense now is impressive. He has had to evolve in that from a lot of ways, and that's part of his getting his body in shape. But it's also from a big when you're behind the defense and you're barking out instructions to the guards in front of you and you're kind of helping command what's going on behind the scenes as your guards are out there trying to defend the perimeter. There's a lot of knowledge that has to go into it as well. And I think Nikola has used that intelligence well as he's gotten more comfortable on the defensive end. And so what he's doing offensively, that's going to show up in the box score, all the triple doubles, but what he's doing defensively shouldn't be underestimated either. And if you look at the numbers right now, Nikola Jokic is hands down the MVP of the NBA.
No, and look, I don't like you should 100% believe that because his numbers do state that. But one thing that I'll add to that is that when, not me, but like at one of my other jobs, we have people that break down the stats. And they were like, look, when he is on the floor, they are statistically like the Golden State Warriors from 2015 and 16, like his plus minus. When he's off the floor, the Denver Nuggets are, now mind you, you're missing Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. has been injured, but it's like when he's, no, but I'm saying when he's off the floor, because they are missing so much other.
We have two max players out.
Yeah, you have two max players. So when you're missing those other two max, when he's off the floor, you're one of the worst teams. And that's not to knock your player. You're missing $80 million in salary cap when they're all off the floor. Like, he is so impressive with how he can anchor a team. But to your point, Allie, the hardest thing with all of us being friends with Josh is you just wish he could catch a break. It's like, he wins the fantasy football league. The Rams are in the Super Bowl. He's got the reigning MVP. Oh, how are the Colorado Avalanche doing right now?
We're in first place.
Big deal.
We didn't even have a dang sweater. Hockey sweater.
Yo, if you go back to episode 16 with Josh, I encourage you all, because that is a completely different episode, by the way. It is hilarious. It's more so on the friendship side. However, Channing, you were complaining then that you wanted Josh to get you a sweater.
Hendrick's still playing hockey, right?
Dog, yes. Hockey sweaters are the best. No, he's playing basketball now. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, if he's anything like his dad, he should probably stay in hockey.
Now this is coming up. I remember this now.
Who was the individual?
You were fans of our team back when we won the cup in '96.
Yeah.
Right? 96 and 01?
Actually true, yes. Yeah, I like
Young
that. My dad was like, well, if you got that, huh?
Said young Channing was a hockey fan?
Yeah, yeah. Hockey Live is the best show I've seen. And I know people may disagree with me, but Hockey Live is the best sport to watch live.
I couldn't agree more.
They're trying to do a better job of making it better on TV to watch. But Hockey Live was one of my favorite. And my son played for 2.5 years. And he might go back. But, obviously COVID and stuff like that,
Channing raises a good point, honestly. I mean, if you guys have never been to an NHL game, I encourage anyone to go.
Yeah, it's fun.
To the casual fan that has maybe seen the sport on television, you have to go to an NHL game. It's the biggest difference between television and seeing it live. You really appreciate the athletes. You appreciate the speed of the game. And, Richard runs around and what he used to do on the NBA court, that's fantastic. These guys are doing it on skates.
It's crazy.
And the hand-eye in the sport is above and beyond almost anything else out there. And to be frank, there's a lot of great guys. I mean, there's great guys in the NBA and across all of our sports, but there's a lot of great guys in the NHL. It's been one of the things that I've really found rewarding is digging in on that side of our business and helping build that. We have an amazing general manager, Joe Sakic, former legendary player for us. And, Richard makes a joke about, where we are right now with our teams. But, I'm very proud of where we are with our teams because you had to build to get here. And there were some years where, you have to go through the building process. You're changing out a lot of things and you're putting in a lot of young players and you're trusting those young players to help you build something for the future. Your coaches are establishing the culture. You're handing that off to certain players to kind of run that on a daily basis and help police that culture. And I think from the Avalanche to the Nuggets to the Rams, and we haven't talked about Arsenal Football Club over in London just yet, but I'm really proud of those organizations. The Colorado Rapids, we finished top of our conference this past year as well. And so we're starting to have a pretty good formula behind the scenes, which is start with really good people who love their sport. And I think that when you start with good people who love what they do, you can really lay a solid foundation. And so for all the relative success, because we haven't won anything yet, but we're having some relative success that, it starts with a foundation of good people that work really hard and, a big believer in organizational culture. And I think that right now all of our teams have that. And I'm really excited about the possibilities for really all of our organizations right now because the one X factor that goes into winning at the highest level is you got to have a little bit of luck here and there. And, a sprained ankle, a hurt knee, as much planning as we all want to do and say goes into this, and it does, it can all get yanked out from underneath you as soon as somebody goes down. So, you want to have your fingers crossed and hope for a little bit of luck. But if we're healthy, I like our chances against anybody.
Could it have all started with his fantasy football league win?
It may have.
Look,
set the table well.
Get into lacrosse.
Set the table well.
That's why Channing can't be at home.
That's why Channing. Look at Channing. This is why this is what we're working with.
But on the as the NBA kind of has gone to spacing and shooting, the NHL has gone for speed and skill.
Yeah.
And so you're not seeing a lot of, you're still going to see some of the heavy hitting and fighting that goes on, but our team is engineered around a lot of very high-speed athletes that are very skilled at what they do. Our captain, Gabe Landeskog, has been with us since he was 18 years old.
Wow.
We've drafted and developed a lot of these guys. Nathan McKinnon, he's a perennial Hart Trophy finalist. You have Cale Makar, who was a finalist for the Norris Trophy last year, league's best defenseman. He's only, I think 21, 22 years old now. And so we have a bunch of young men that are very focused, and now they have some Stanley Cup experience as well. We don't have Stanley Cup Finals experience, but there's a few teams. Vegas has had our number in the playoffs for a few years, and I know that our guys, we're focused on being healthy come April, and we'll see where the chips fall at the end of it. But our guys, we've got a good chance if we're healthy.
Shall we get into Arsenal?
Yes.
Let's talk about some soccer.
Is it soccer or is it football?
Channing, should we mute Channing for that comment? Channing, it's football.
It's football.
I know, I'm totally joking. Come on.
I'm totally joking.
Man, I like
totally
football.
joking.
Totally joking.
I actually have done a lot of reading on this, but it's not my story to tell. But I think having you here and certainly listening to a lot of your interviews around this entire process is very intriguing. And I think it's one also, I think at the end of it, you're very adamant about your fans understanding and knowing where you stand as ownership as well with everything. So I think just from the beginning to where it has now become, starting with the decision with the Super League.
Oh, okay. Jumping right into it.
Yeah.
Well, like overall.
Yeah.
Arsenal and what the one thing it's kind of cool to introduce everybody to, and I'll just say from my standpoint, is because just like
you've been to a game.
Yeah, I've been to a game. We went to RC Chelsea. Yeah, no big deal. And so No, the cool thing about Josh is just like anything else. It's like watching your friend's journey. Like you watched me like come out of college, and you were one of the first people that would like, you were like, man, I got emotional watching you win a championship. But he also knows that I was competing against Luke and watching me and Channing win a championship. So like Josh has been there for every step of the journey. And so it's like to watch your journey, when you were, I think I might go back to NYU. I think I'm about going back to graduate school, or I might, just go, shadow my pops. And it's like, I'm like, hey, Josh, man, they're not going to teach you anything at NYU. You're not going to learn
really
from your
taking
dad.
a trip down memory lane here today.
Right. You wanted to go all the way back to the very beginning.
But my point is, and I wanted to set you up, is that like, just take us through like, when you started getting involved with Arsenal and becoming more and more prominent there and spending more time over there. And then just, take us on a little bit of a journey.
Why it led to what it led to.
Okay. So my father first started buying shares in Arsenal. It's been 15 years probably, 14, 15 years. Arsenal is an institution in European football that is unlike many others. It's got an amazing history. It was publicly traded, kind of similar, I guess, to the Green Bay Packers or something you would say over here. So we started buying shares, and eventually that led to him requiring over 50% of the company. We got into the mid-60s at one point. There was another minority shareholder that had most of the remaining shares for a number of years, but then that was when I was put onto the board. This is probably 2013 or 14. And so I was put onto the board, started getting more familiar with the club. I was actually, before I started playing basketball as a youngster, soccer was my first love. I say soccer because that's what I had to call it over here. I don't use that term really anywhere else other than when I'm on American soil. It's actually become second nature to just say football at this point in time, with as much time as I've spent over there. And so, Arsenal Football Club, I was very familiar with. I knew some of the great teams. Arsenal, we have one of our most famous teams, if not our most famous team, was the Invincibles of 2003, 2004. They went the entire Premier League unbeaten. And over there you can have draws as well as, you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and then 0 points for a loss. They were able to go the entire season unbeaten. And so that's something that our football club has to, that they're had to hang on just a little bit. And so we're trying to reach that level again. Will anyone ever go unbeaten in the Premier League? I doubt so. I mean, Manchester City and Liverpool are as impressive as clubs as you can.
A little nervous, lads. A little nervous. Like 2 years ago, Liverpool they were on a roll. They were on a roll. Yeah,
they were on a roll. But very difficult to do, obviously. But anyway, we eventually in summer of 2018, we purchased the remaining shares, and we now own 100% of the club. Before that, I had started to get more involved behind the scenes. We had an absolutely legendary manager, Arsene Wenger, who is an even better person than he was a coach. And he was with us for 22 seasons, and we were nearing the end of his regime. And so turning that page was always going to be difficult. I mean, when you have someone that's tenured that long in any organization, even if it's not sports, it's always going to be a difficult transition period. And so we transitioned out of that into a different model, which, if you're familiar with European sports at all, European football, the manager has kind of a dual role. He's coaching, but he's also monitoring the incoming and outgoing players on the transfer market. Similar to what a general manager would do over here with trades, draft, and that. But the manager was kind of an all-encompassing role. We put in a slightly different structure involving a head coach. We have what's called a technical director now. And so it's more of a North American model to what we would have over here. We've now, since December of 2019, we have a man named Mikel Arteta in charge of our squad. He's our manager. We have a man named Edu, who's our technical director. He's a former Arsenal player from Brazil. Mikel played for our squad for a number of years under our previous manager, Arsene Wenger. So he knows the culture that we want to have. Behind the scenes, we have a wonderful board that includes my dad and myself, a gentleman named Tim Lewis, Phil Harris, and we have a great CEO in Vinay. And trying to get this right has been a challenge. There's no way around it. Trying to get this right in the middle of a global pandemic has made it extra challenging. Mikel, was a great player in his own right, but he had been an assistant manager up in Manchester City underneath a gentleman named Pep Guardiola for a few years. And so Mikel has a very good idea of what elite coaching and culture looks like. And so trying to implement on the fly and then getting the rug kind of pulled out from under you with COVID has been challenging. Because over there, over here, Rich, when something like COVID hits, you can roughly say when the BRI pie, if it shrinks, if it grows, there's mechanisms in place where you can try to get both parties, whether it's the players or the league, through the challenges that we were all facing. Over there, that system doesn't quite exist.
Really quick, so when he's talking about BRI, he's talking about basketball-related income. So the way they have it in the NBA is basketball-related income is you take a little bit out for infrastructure, whether it's like, employees at the NBA, and then the rest of the pie, like the CBA is like, this is what it is. Players get 51, owners get 49%, and it's just whatever that number is. It might be higher one year, it might be lower one year. Typically, there's a scale that trends up because of just new revenue, but that's what he's talking about when he's saying basketball-related income. So just to
and that I apologize. So when overnight the lights turned off, when we weren't allowed to have fans in our stadiums, for example, your game day revenue got shut off, and so that piece of the pie got taken out, and everything moved on. Over there, that piece of the pie gets taken out, but it's not really accounted for. You're still on the hook for what you've signed up for because there's no greater mechanism in place. So there's a lot of challenges. I mean, especially when you're hosting, Arsenal Stadium, the Emirates seats 60,000 people. And so there were some challenges. Yeah, there were some challenges going through all that.
Go Gunners.
And there was a lot of clubs, including Arsenal, that were feeling the pain of the pandemic probably more than any business on earth, because you're still on the hook contractually, and you've had a huge source of your revenue evaporate instantly. There were many challenges with that from a new manager perspective, managing players, understanding what we were dealing with from a health standpoint. My funny story involving the start of COVID, I think Richard's heard it probably, but I was actually over in London for the last week of February, the first week of March 2020. And I was there on all Arsenal business. It was my first trip following up from a month previously when we'd hired Mikel. And got through a lot of stuff. We were planning for the summer, had met with our chairman at the time over a few things. And by the time I landed in the UK to when the time that I left, Italy was fine. By the time I left, Italy was shut down. Jeez. And so when I got back, I was kind of debriefing a few guys on our trip, and I said, I don't know what's going on, but something's really weird is happening over there. And I don't know how it's going to affect us yet, but we need to be prepared to possibly go behind closed doors for games. And I was getting kind of sideways look from our executives in Denver, like, really? And a few days later, we had an NBA call where the league was talking about the different things and what was happening around the world. Obviously, Italy was on everybody's radar by that time. And that was on a Wednesday afternoon. I had found out 2 days prior that I had shaken hands with the owner of a Greek club called Olympiakos, who he had tested positive. I had traveled back to the United States. I had hugged my mother, who, she's in her early 70s, and it was hitting home very quickly how this can get out of hand. And so I was explaining that to the NBA, and we were talking about going behind closed doors, and we hung up that phone, and there was nothing that was decided or anything, but we were just gradually starting to talk about behind closed doors. 4 hours later, that was when the league suspended itself. The following day, the rest of the North American leagues suspended themselves. By that evening, we had found out that our head coach at Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, had tested positive. By the following morning, the Premier League had postponed everything. And so I was sitting there in my house by myself, having shaken hands with the guy from Olympiakos and waiting on my test results. I thought I had taken down the entire sports world because I had seen all these people, and I thought I was the one common thread.
Yeah.
And so I was
Wild.
about to go jump out the window before you realized at that point in time it was everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it was an eye opener to start COVID for me personally, because we were so involved across all of these different sports. And so to fast forward to back to your question, the Super League, that conversation came out of just a lot of people trying to figure out a way to stabilize things economically when you're really staring into an economic abyss. And you're on the hook for certain contractual obligations. You're trying to figure out a way to honor those obligations, but get through your short-term cash that you have to figure out a way to make payroll, and you're missing a huge chunk of your revenue. That cash has to come from somewhere, and so you're thinking of very creative ideas to try to stabilize things in a meaningful way. And we obviously, as I've said to all of our supporters and our fans globally, if they've ever asked me about it, did we get it wrong? We rushed it. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and we've kind of said we've apologized. We've made our peace with it, but it was done with a good intention, and that was to try to stabilize things in a way where clubs could really make sense of the future, because there's a lot of clubs across Europe right now that are really on uncertain footing, and to get things stabilized would be a benefit to everybody.
What was that conversation like when you came across that one question, when it came to having a Super League with or a Super League without Arsenal? Like, what was that?
That was a question that we asked. That was the question that we asked ourselves internally. And when you have people working together and moving things forward very quickly, and you realize they're asking you to be a part of something that could be controversial, but you think could benefit the sport long term, you have to try to boil things down. If you're thinking of making major decisions in a short time frame, how can we boil this down into the most simplest of questions to ask ourselves? And that was the one that we asked ourselves. And what is worse, a Super League or a Super League without Arsenal? And if the train was already leaving the station, then we answered that question that a Super League without Arsenal would be the toughest one to explain to our supporters. And whether or not we got the question right or wrong, it doesn't matter, because we didn't move forward with the idea, and we're excited and happy to be where we are as part of the Premier League. And we have a great young squad, great young manager, and we've got a bright future. And so now that we have 100% of the club, we've had it only since 2018, we're laying the foundations of a really bright future. I think if any of the Arsenal fan base wants to look at our teams here in North America, which surprisingly they don't do very often.
They don't care.
No, and it's not.
They're learning. They're learning.
I don't think they don't care, but they're really curious as to how we do our operations. Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you want to do this? And I want to say to them, and I sit down and I explain how we look at things, whether it's a person in the media or the fan that happens to grab me at my hotel if I'm happen to bump into somebody and they recognize me. I try to keep a very low profile, but some people every now and then will recognize me from Arsenal. And really what I just say is, we're very proud of, over here we draft and develop. At Arsenal, we have an amazing academy where these kids come through. They work their way up. We have some outstanding academy products playing for us right now, starting to play really meaningful minutes and play well for us. We have several other young kids just starting to enter their late teens, early 20s that are starting to make some noise at the first team level. And then we have a couple guys that are in their mid-20s that we've recruited, and they've matured with us for the last few years, that are really starting to lead the leadership charge behind the scenes. And so you see the foundation of the culture that I talked about earlier starting to take shape. And I think you see it starting to manifest itself on the pitch a little bit, because these kids are really starting to play, and I'm not sure where we are right now. I think we're sitting in 5th or 6th in the league. We need to be higher. Our goals are to be higher, but to be there with the youngest squad in the Premier League, I think is something that every Arsenal fan should get behind.
So, first of all, if people don't understand football over in Europe, is that you guys your academies are I won't say like colleges, but it's like you guys can bring kids in at 15, 16 years old, and just they're still like doing school and learning, but they're like training, like football becomes like their job. Am I correct? Kind of like the minor leagues, kind of like a minor league.
Yeah, it's just it's a slightly different system. I mean, some academies do involve like schooling.
Yeah.
Kids can go to school and then they train in the afternoons. Some academies, are just training after the kids come from school.
Yeah.
So it depends on the club, but we have a strong history with our academy, and these kids can come even younger than that if they're in a certain radius around where our academy is.
So
in London.
Thank you for expressing that, because I know you don't talk, like that was one thing that I know about you. You don't talk very much. You're very reserved. Most of the time it's us annoying you and asking you a ton of questions. But on the text chain, our fantasy football league.
You're never annoying, Richard.
Yeah, shut up. When all of this stuff was kind of going down, and you guys made the decision, like, okay, we see, the FIBA impact, because, FIBA, and then they were like, these players won't be able to play for their respective countries, and you guys, when I say gracefully bowed out, you're like, hey, look, like we were facing an economic struggle, and we made a decision, and okay, we understand that. Like, when you guys decided to, back out, and just say like, hey, look, we want to, just stay in the normal tradition stuff. Like, were you, I don't want to say surprised is not the right word. Were you like, I guess surprise is the right word, a little bit about how intense it got very quick? Because it was like, it went from announcement, which I have to say is very impressive, that the biggest leagues are the biggest teams in the world, kept this, quietly wraps, and then they did an announcement. And then like a week, maybe it was a week, 10 days later, it kind of, it disappeared. So like,
well, Richard, you're wrong on your time frame, because it was 48 hours.
48 hours.
And that 48 hours does not define who you guys are.
Yeah.
I've read
so
that.
48 hours. It went 48 hours.
Listen to that.
I thought it was a week.
Absolutely. But I think that, one of the messages that I said to our supporters, and I do listen to our supporters over there. I mean, I listen to our fans here with our teams, but the level of passion that is involved in European football and the support that goes into these clubs is, I don't want to say it's deeper than anything we have over here, but it's way deeper than anything we have over here. And it's hard to truly relate as an American or as a foreigner heading into the UK, the passion that really goes on when people support these clubs. And I think that, whether or not they fully understood the concept of what we were trying to do, it didn't matter, because they didn't want the change. And that was the only thing that mattered, was that we were going to make changes to the system that they love. And I understood that. And I think part of being a good leader is making unpopular decisions at times on behalf of the group. And then part of being a good leader as well is listening to the group and understanding when to back off. And I think that was what we did, is that, once we full understanding of what was going on, very quickly, you knew the right thing to do as a leader was to get out of the process, however that was. And there's a lot of legal things that are going on behind the scenes, and so I don't want to. Yeah. I'm still not going to go into much detail, but I think that as I said, part of the leadership was making unpopular decisions and understanding when you're wrong. And we understood that we were wrong. We got out of it, and to be frank, I'm encouraged by the whole process, because it's brought me and our staff closer to our supporters than ever before. We have an advisory board now that I meet with that involves several of our big supporter groups and elected representatives from there. I'm going to interact with them again this week. So you're sharing and exchanging ideas about how you can interact better with them and their respective groups, from ideas around the stadium, the match day experience, to their ideas of how we can evolve our squad. I trust all of our ideas how to evolve the squad more to Mikel Arteta and Edu. Those two guys, I think, are going to lead the charge, along with this guy named Richard Garlick, behind the scenes dealing all of our player contracts. But those fans also provide an incredibly valuable, perspective on community engagement. Where could I personally get more involved in the club, so who I am and I'm not just some name on a sheet? Because I think part of my interaction with them is I want to understand them, and I want them to understand me. I don't think Richard will tell you, I I don't have a lot to hide. I mean, I'm a pretty open book if you want to sit down and talk to me. My time gets pulled a lot of different directions because of the businesses that we're in, and I still want to have a little bit of personal time on the other side of it for myself. But I really enjoy sitting down with our fans, talking sports, and understand what they're thinking, because whether or not we see it through the same lens, we all want the same thing, and that's to win.
But I think it's also the common denominator, because when you think of this episode that we have just completed, you started off when it came to the sports talk about the Rams fan that has stood out to you. You know, then you bring it full circle in terms of, and we've all experienced it with especially the pandemic and COVID. The one thing so many people said, from players to the fans themselves, is how much sport is different without the fans, right? To now the importance of the fan voice for Arsenal. And obviously that's the one thing that stood out to me about the purity for the position that you are in, Josh, was that you listened to your fans when it came to a decision like that.
Yeah, and their response to that was, you should have listened to us ahead of the time. I'm like, well, I can't change that now. I can only adjust myself going forward, and I try not to make the same mistake twice. And so I'm really encouraged by the dialogue that I've been having with some of the fan groups, because really, you know, when we boil down through the different things of what we're saying, like I said, we all want to win. We all want to win, which is the same thing across all of our teams. But they've had some amazing suggestions of how I can better interact with them off the pitch. Yeah. Whether that's coming to a pub to grab a pint, or, you know, just doing anything of that nature, so they understand.
You start talking about drinking
beer. We want to win. We're in this business to win.
Yeah.
So.
One of my favorite quotes ever in life is, the greatest leaders are the ones who are not willing to lead and be able to lead, but also the ones that are willing to be led. And you, my friend, that's what you got. So cheers to that. Write that down, Channing. By the way, what is the sport called? Is it football or is it soccer?
No,
what did you do? Not
follow Channing anywhere.
In some degree, Channing, I'll give you credit. I called you today for the wine suggestions. So
Okay, listen.
I'll follow your lead there.
So my Rams are going to win a Super Bowl. Like, this is the thing. Me and Allie have the same starter jacket.
No. First of all, I had this jacket,
me and Allie have the same starter. Hold on.
Allie's not even a Rams fan.
Okay, thank you. I am in LA. I will support the team.
your helmet,
However,
Richard?
I'm from Ohio. I'm a Browns fan. Let's
Where's
make
the
that
helmet
clear.
you had on?
My helmet? Yeah. So I didn't want to rock the helmet, you know, today, but I got my jacket. I'm ready. This is what I will be wearing to the Super Bowl. I don't need tickets from you. I'm fine.
Does that fit you?
Does it fit me? It fits me well enough.
Probably not over a hooded sweatshirt and whatever else you got under there.
This is
It's
going
extra
to-
medium, Channing. It's extra medium.
Look,
It fits
I'm
fact
gonna
that you
lose a
just put that
couple.
on.
I'm gonna lose a couple before the game.
Shout out to my girl Sarah for
Yeah,
getting me.
what's her name?
Sarah
Sarah.
Borges.
Thank you, Sarah.
Borgessi.
You're
Sarah
awesome.
Borgessi.
The check is in the mail. This is dope.
For what?
Those are great looking jackets.
These are
They're
great.
vintage. That is a 1984 vintage Rams jacket.
See,
would you like
I'm
one?
kinda
I can get
jealous.
you one.
I mean,
We'll get you one.
We'll get you one. We'll get you one. This is the, you know.
Look
this
at
is-
Channing.
this is
Channing
all-
just
this
wants
is
the
like
free stuff.
exclusive. You're a Cardinals fan, you clown. Shut up.
Josh, is there anything that we did not touch on from our research and everything that we've wanted to see here? Is there anything left? Anything that you're working on outside of all of your... I do have a question. I feel like all of your teams and everything that you're a part of are like having kids. Do you have a favorite?
I don't.
You can't answer that question.
I know.
Whoever's
I
playing
know,
that
I
night,
was
whoever's
kidding.
playing that night is his favorite.
No. I mean,
like having
it's funny.
kids.
It's funny you asked that, because everyone's always like, "Oh, basketball has to be," and they all assume. I mean, there was a whole period in Denver, and I still get people that come up to me in Denver here and there. They don't not do it anymore, but they just assume that basketball is like my baby because that was the sport that I played.
Yeah.
Well, that was where I cut my teeth kind of learning the business. And so, you know, I guess that's where like my initial experience was. But really the sports that I guess that I never played are the ones that I find the most rewarding, because I get to meet people that I've never been around. I learn a lot because I don't know the game the way that I do basketball from playing it. I mean, to Richard's point, my college coach is now the coach of the Utah Jazz. And so we ran a lot of pro sets in college, which is probably why I didn't have much success in college. But you know, I need a lot of screens, Channing. I gotta. If I'm gonna get open, I need a lot of
The
screens.
game is different now, Josh. The game is different now. Like your shooting stroke and athleticism, I think would have played really well right now.
Josh loves Overwatch League.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Channing's a big Overwatch guy. Okay, so my last question to you, if I can remember it. Damn it, I completely.
I hate when
You
that
drank too much
happens.
wine, Richard.
Not yet. We'll get there. What was my last question to you? Well, the good thing is that they're going to edit all this out. Probably not,
The
because I'm
golf.
saying.
I got
No.
a funny. I mean, the golf one is I have a funny golf story.
No, I don't
from
care
this
about.
I was going to say,
golf.
we're going to end on a funny story. So.
No, I don't know. What was the? Oh, this was a question I had. Okay, This is what it
Hate
is.
when
It's
that happens. How old are you?
I'm terrible. So my question is this: because no, because you are people don't like it's weird. Like you are like a known person, but you like still.
Hang on. I'm a known name.
A known name.
certain people, but to certain people, but I'm not a face that people recognize. And
Yeah,
I'd love to try to.
By the way,
You're
are
like
you?
that
Ra's
way.
al Ghul from Batman.
Oh, okay.
At my last Arsenal match, I heard that was called Doctor Strange by a big portion of the fan base.
That beard will do
Really
that.
want to get into the Marvel universe on me.
But how do you balance? But how do you balance that? That's the one
Ra's al
question I
Ghul's a
think
better
people
reference.
because you do have relationships because like what do
To
you?
your point, I was gonna say, wait, you started talking about LeBron, but you called him Bron. So I was like, wait, are you friends with Bron?
Yeah,
Are you friends with
he's not
LeBron?
Brian, but you just know guys, and again, we all because people understand like we all came up together. So it was Luke, it was me, JB Bickerstaff, right? Like there's like a bunch of guys that like we would sit we would sit and have beers when we were 20 and like we would go on vacations, like we would all hang out. Yeah, and so then next thing you know is like you're now in this position where we're kind of like laughing and joking, like
You want Channing to go away, don't you?
No. I love Channing.
But it was more of like, how do you balance that? Because I know that because of your position, you have to like not be careful of your friendships, but you have to like be careful what you say, and you have to do that, which is
I don't know how you do it with all the names that you just listed. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
There have been times where I'm not good at managing. The bear has managed me. The bear has almost eaten me as opposed to me managing the bear.
Yeah.
But I've met. That's why I think the coolest part about being in sports. I guess I won't answer to answer your question. I don't have a favorite team or favorite organization that I deal with on a daily basis. My dad, and he's the same way. If our teams are doing well, it relaxes me. Obviously, if our teams are doing poorly, you gotta run right into the fire. And so like if the teams are doing well, that means I don't have to focus on it nearly as much because the culture is solid from our GM to our coach to our players patrolling it on a daily basis. Then I'm probably focused more on the business side, the revenue side. And so like it's a one side of the business can't exist without the other. The marketing and sales department doesn't exist without the team, and the team can't exist without those guys generating the revenue to pay the players. And so it's like that across all of our organizations. And so I'll run to where they need me the most. And usually that's one of our teams is in transition. But fortunately right now we have amazing head coaches that are in place to help things on a daily basis. We have great players laying the foundation of competitiveness. And then we have great commissioners at all the leagues right now helping things, try to run as smoothly as possible. And so for me, if one of our teams is doing poorly, that's where I'll be. You can find me there. But right now, things are really starting to solidify.
Got a little bit of free time right now.
Hence why he's on the Road Trippin podcast.
Yeah, I'm on the Road Trippin podcast.
He's at Pebble Beach.
With that said, let's end on your golf story.
Well, it's Pebble Beach. Okay, so Pebble Beach. So this is actually my second year going, but it's the first time they've had the real tournament. I was fortunate enough to get invited last year, but they had to cancel the event because of COVID.
Yeah.
But they had a one-day tournament. It wasn't even a tournament. It was just basically people that they had extended invitations to could come play Pebble Beach for one day, and you got to play 9 holes with one pro, and then but you weren't allowed. You had to carry your own bag. There was no spectators, no nothing. You just go there, play golf, and then you're out that afternoon. And I said, sure, I've only played Pebble Beach once before, and that was basically at dark. And so I was like, would love to go play this amazing golf course. So obviously, me being me, definitely didn't practice beforehand. I'll just show up.
Once an athlete, always an
I'll
athlete.
just show
like,
up.
I'll be
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's not an event, but there's no fans. Doesn't matter. They're not keeping score like they do in usual years. But I was still like, obviously I need to hit some golf balls. And so I had last played in early December, and so I go up there, and I have dinner. Or excuse me, I go up there, and there's COVID protocols in place. I had to go take the test. I go to my room, wait for 2 hours to get my results. They finally call me. I'm clear. Go get this badge, get this sticker to make sure they know you're COVID negative. Here's where your tee time is tomorrow. And so I asked this guy, and I was like, hey man, I haven't hit any golf balls in like 2 months. I was like, I got to get to the driving range today. I was like, where do I head? And he's like, well, if you go up there, he goes, did they give you any directions? And no one really knew where to tell me to go. So like, just go hop on that line for the shuttles, and they'll take you up to the driving range. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I go up, shuttles like, you're carrying your bag, but you're going to the driving range? And everyone was kind of second guessing me as I wanted to get to the driving range, but they just kept shooing me along. So I finally get up there, and I walk around the driving range at Pebble Beach, and it's this beautiful practice facility, and you come around the back of this building, and the range is all lined up there, and I come around the side, and I get there, and all pros, not one amateur.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking 30, 40 guys out there. The only slot that's open is in the very middle of the driving range. And so I'm like kind of scratching my head, and I'm like, okay.
Full send.
So I go up there and I set my bag down, and it's like Bill Haas behind me, and this other guy I recognize from TV in front of me, and the sounds these guys' clubs are making when they hit the ball is just, and the ball is just flying. I mean, and so I go over and I grab a bucket, and even the guys at the handing out balls, the range balls, were kind of looking at me sideways.
You're not supposed to be here, bro.
And so I set those down. I grab my wedge, and I start kind of loosening up, and and these guys all have like their iPads, like videoing their swings,
Angles.
their swing coaches behind them, like their fitness coaches. And I'm by myself carrying my bag. And so I take my practice swings, take my first swing, and I might as well cut the ball in half. I mean, it gets like a foot off the ground, I mean, straight down the range.
Next to 40 pros.
Oh, man.
In the middle.
And I mean, and I hit like 5 of these. And by the 5th one, I'm just laughing to myself. I'm like, oh, man, I can't believe you did this to yourself. Can't believe you did this to yourself. So I went up, I grabbed my 7-iron, and just swing as hard as you can. And so I went back up there, and I started swinging that 7-iron, and I eventually worked through it and got myself straightened out of it.
Yips?
I was up there for like an hour, and after my 5th, time I'd cut the ball in half. I mean, you could see fitness coaches kind of elbowing each other. So anyway, fast forward to the end of the round the following day, and I'm thanking everyone, the tournament host, and we all have, it's still in the middle of COVID, so everybody's, respecting the COVID guidelines and everything. And thank you very much. I got to head out. I appreciate everything. Hope to, see you guys again soon. And I asked the tournament director, I was like, yesterday when I went out there to the driving range, I noticed that, there really wasn't an area designated for amateurs like there was this morning, like this 3 areas. And I was like, was that same setup on the driving range yesterday? Because I didn't see the amateur area. And he's like, yeah, we didn't want to say anything to you, but amateurs weren't allowed on the driving range yesterday.
Oh, jeez. So every time you walked up, you're like, who's this guy
pro
carrying
out
his
there
bag?
was already like, who is this person randomly in the middle of us hitting balls and embarrassing himself? But not only that, but they knew that I wasn't supposed to be there as well. So I was the clown show in the middle of the driving range while they were probably all just sitting there just laughing.
No, not probably. They all were.
So were you more nervous for that moment or going into last weekend's NFC Championship game?
That moment.
That moment.
That moment. Without a doubt. When you're out of your element and there's people that do this for a living.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't been that embarrassed in a while.
Yeah.
You know what happened? They were like, hey, they probably wanted to kick you off, and then they looked up your shit online. They said, all Pebble Beach. Let that man hit whatever he want to hit.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Don't say
But it's
nothing.
honestly, I mean, if anybody is listening to this in the Bay Area or in Monterey next year and you haven't been, it's a great event. It's cool.
awesome.
Really
Yeah.
cool. Really
That's
cool.
so awesome. You are awesome, Josh. This
Thank
was
you,
so
Josh.
much fun. Obviously, you have so much
Thank you,
exciting
guys.
things going on. Good luck,
Thank you.
obviously, this week.
School Rams.
Ball 56.
Knock on wood. We'll
Let's
see what
go.
happens.
Richard is from Phoenix, just to let everyone know.
I was born in Los
Richard
Angeles.
grew up
I'm
in
not from
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
That
I
is
grew up-
another edition with
I
Josh
was born in New
Kroenke
York. I don't like the
of
damn
Road Trippin.
Giants.
Well, you're an idiot. Let's go Rams.
Ended on that.